This is the last video I'll give you before we head to Vegas. Let's talk about two things in this material. We're going to talk about how we support attacking runners that move towards the try line in the middle of the field as opposed to on the edges in our wide and wide inside attack pattern. This is more of a free and open play, kind of a role, responsibility, clarity set of material. So as we move the ball across the field, basically their defense oftentimes will try to push just as we do across the field. When you see them starting to switch or pushing across the field, those are good opportunities to attack up the field. You can see that we've made one of our runners there at letter A. They're going to attack that gap that is just to the right side of our player that has the ball. The question becomes then, who is the ruck support player and who recycles that, and what does that recycle player do? Well, just like our rule, if you pass the ball, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be the rucker. There are a few exceptions to that, but really, if you pass the ball, you should intend to ruck if that player is an attacking runner. We've designated the recycle player with RE, so you'll see that the player that's on the open side of the ball, they become the recycle player. The reason for that is that we want to try to hold the defense. You'll notice that there's a player there's 2 players on the left side of the screen, 2 players on the right. One could argue that where we attack the space, that the defense has us evenly defended. I would argue that the ball is closer to the left side, the left touch line, and so there's more operable space on the right side, and that's where we're going to want to go with the ball. That backside player that was holding the defender on the left side of the screen has to run across and join and be a looping or supporting player to create a group of 3 that attacks to the edge. Once we've moved the ball out of a middle attack, it gets to the edge. Now we can go right back into our wide pattern or wide inside pattern. But that's the roles and responsibilities if somebody attacks in the middle of the field. Let's take a little different look at it. So if we've got an attack into the middle of the field and they don't have us evenly distributed or evenly defended, they have actually more defense to the wide side of the field than they do to the short side, because the short side tackler was the one that actually attacked or tackled the our gap runner. So the same players ruck and the same players recycle, but then it appears that our most advantageous place to attack becomes the left side. And so this is where we break the rule, where the rucker that just rucked, when we go short, they've got to get laterally across the field and become a rucker again. The player just off the ball in a short side run has to go vertical to preserve space. It's very similar to running a short line in an attack 2 pattern or out of our free kick or penalty play. The group of 3 that's attacking that space, the recycle player becomes one of them. And so they're going to actually pick that ball up and move with the ball in hand a few steps towards that short line runner. And they're going to read that first defender. If that first defender stays with them or is unable to defend that short line runner, we're going to give that ball. If that first defender steps down on that short line runner, we're going to dummy that, and then we're going to have a 2-on-1 on the outside. So the last rucker has to get with that short line runner and be a rucker again. It's a little bit of a hard work. And that recycle player has to chase that short line runner up into the attack and then be another recycle player. What happens then is that the player that's still to the wide side of the field has to join to create a group of attacking 3 onto the left side of the field. That player that's in the very middle has to run and get into an inside support or an outside supporting lane. Hopefully that makes sense. When somebody attacks in the middle of the field, communication is always very important, but when they attack in the middle of the field, it's very, very important. All right, let's quickly go through our free kick or penalty play. Remember that if a ref gives us a free kick or a penalty, you can always just tap and go. But this is when there's been a stop and he doesn't allow you to go quick and we still want to run it. We're going to get a tap from the player with the ball. That player is going to attack up the field and at a 45-degree angle towards a player who's going to be a short line runner. That short line runner has to run at the player marking them and their inside shoulder. We want that defender to step down on them. The backside behind the player who tapped the ball has to loop and replace that short line runner in that line. The ball carrier has two options. They can drop it to that short line runner. Oftentimes, though, we don't want to do that because they've got defenders there. We're going to try to move that ball to space. We're not trying to hit the player that's replacing the short line runner. We want to go behind the short line runner. They act as a dummy runner, and we want to hit that player that's out into space with a 3-on-2 on the right side of the screen, as you can see. Now, that player has two options. He's really reading that inside defender and the two defenders that are there. We're gonna that player that replaced the short line runner is going to get up inside that first receiver and attack into that space, and that the person that's got the ball can either dump it inside to that looping runner or move the ball wide, depending on what the defense gives them. In this case, we've been able to move the ball effectively with numbers advantages all the way to the edge. And if that our, especially when we have our guys and their speed, a guy like Sean Holstein and Avalos and Caden Baskett and Thomas Maroney, they're going to finish that. And so you'll see this. That's all, boys. Be prepared on February 24th and 26th to know those things. We'll walk them once, but we're going to ask you to execute when we get there. Take care.